This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. This is Elisabeth, and I'm here today with Emily and Lindsay, and we're here to talk nerdy to you about time travel. And we wanted to thank you for tuning in today as we are fast approaching our 1-year anniversary. It's coming up in just a couple of weeks. And to celebrate, we wanted to do a Q&A session. Of course, to do a Q&A session, we'll need your questions to answer. So head on over to the Beauties and Headcanons Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr page and submit your questions now. Also, make sure to download and subscribe to Beauties and Headcanons so you never miss our nerd talk again.
This episode is brought to you by Squadcast. As podcasters who all live in different states and different time zones, one of the most important things when we record, which we always do remotely, is the quality of our audio together. Current solutions like Skype, which we have used, and Zoom are dependent on our internet quality, but Squadcast is a simple browser-based tool that requires no additional software to install. We just click a link and we're good to go. The audio is recorded locally as high-quality WAV files and then magically uploaded to the guest's computer. We've been using them for a few weeks now, and we love the experience. To get started, go to squadcast.fm for your 14-day free trial.
So I am going to start off and talk about my fandoms that I'm most familiar with as far as time travel goes. And to start off with that, what better fandom? Well, there might be a better fandom to start off with, but I'm going to start off with Harry Potter, because when I think of time travel, I automatically just think of the time turner. So talking about the mechanics of how time travel works, that's what this episode is going to be encompassing. So we're going to go over a bunch of different fandoms, and I'm starting off here with Harry Potter. Like I mentioned, Harry Potter uses the time turner, which is a magical form of time travel, as opposed to a technological form of time travel. We'll encounter other fandoms that use different types of things to travel in time, but the time turner is one that is magical in nature. Of course, in the Harry Potter universe, lots of things are magical in nature. The time turner is one way to do it, but there are also spells that can be used. It's being studied in the Department of Mysteries by Professor Saul Croker. And it follows the rules that time travel makes permanent, or not necessarily that time travel makes permanent things, but that time is a continuous line of permanent decisions. And so when I think of the way things work in the Harry Potter universe, it's best explained by what Harry said about when he cast his Patronus. He said, I knew I had already done that, cast the Patronus, so I knew I could do it again, because he had already seen himself cast the Patronus. He just didn't know it was him. He thought it was his father from across the lake. So he knew that it was him that had done it already, and so that made him more confident to be able to do it again. And so I guess to maybe explain it in a different way, there's only one possible outcome for an entire time stream. Rather than creating multiple universes or alternative realities, every action is set in stone. And also in the Harry Potter universe, it's very dangerous to encounter past or future versions of oneself, because it could cause probably the past version to go crazy. Maybe the future version, I don't really know. But here's what Professor Saul Croker says about, he has spent his entire career in the Department of Mysteries studying time magic, by the way, in case you were wondering. But as our investigations currently stand, the longest period that may be relived without the possibility of serious harm to the traveler or to time itself is around 5 hours. So when Harry and Hermione went back in time in The Prisoner of Azkaban, they went back for about a few hours. I think it was like 3 hours, maybe. That was my guess.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 or 3 hours, because didn't he say about 2 turns or something like that?
2 or 3 turns. Dumbledore told Hermione 3 turns should do it, I think it was. Yeah. And I think each turn is an hour on the time turner. So I'm pretty sure, about 3 hours is how long they spent.
It'd be interesting to see how many turns go on the time turner. Like if you go to 5, if it really is too many. You know what I mean? Like if it overlaps itself or not.
Yeah. I would be interested in that. I also have from Pottermore, that's where I got Professor Saul Croker's quote there as well, but J.K. Rowling's words too. She says, I went far too lightheartedly into the subject of time travel in the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban book. Well, I do not regret it. She says Azkaban is one of her favorite books in the series, and is one of mine too. I love it. It opened up a vast number of problems for me, she says, because after all, if wizards could go back and undo problems, then where were her future plots? It makes sense. It says, I solved the problem to my own satisfaction in stages. Firstly, I had Dumbledore and Hermione emphasize how dangerous it is to be seen in the past, to remind the reader that there might be unforeseen and dangerous consequences, as well as solutions in time travel. Secondly, I had Hermione give back the only time turner ever to enter Hogwarts. And thirdly, I smashed all the remaining time turners during the battle in the Department of Mysteries, removing the possibility of reliving even short periods in the future. This is just one example of the ways in which, when writing fantasy novels, one must be very careful what one invents. For every benefit, there is usually a drawback.
And, I kind of find it interesting that with the time turner, you can only go back. You can never go forward in time. So you have to go back, but then you have to actually live through the time that you go back in.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can only go back. Yeah, you can only go back as far as, like, your lifespan, basically.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you would die in the past.
Yeah, which would make it really weird.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and then also if you go back and then you like arrive back at the same point, you've gone too far back into the past, then your body will have aged that time additionally. So then when you get back to that same point where you went back into the past, you're that much older than when you left.
Yeah, it's just weird to think about.
I know, it like bends your mind, and you're doing all these mind acrobatics.
Hold on, ladies, we're only on the first fandom.
I know, right? Okay. Well, let's move on to the next one.
Right from here.
Yeah.
For my first one, I'm just going to start out with probably the simplest one, and that's supernatural. And in that universe, obviously, time travel is facilitated by supernatural means. Most of the time, it's usually done by angels. They can use their grace to kind of push somebody back in time or themselves back in time. And I presume they can go forward in time as well if they wish. It's just sort of a thing that they can do. It does use some of their grace, so they can't just like push somebody infinitely far into the past or the future. And when they do that, it is limited. I know when Sam and Dean had to go back in time to actually kill a phoenix for good. I know it's kind of a contradiction there, but when they had to go back in time to do it, they only had 24 hours to do it, and then they would get pulled back to the present. So there was that time limit. So if they didn't get it done in that time period, then, well, too bad. They missed their opportunity. However, that's not the only way you can time travel. There are spells that you can use if you are knowledgeable enough to do that. Their grandfather actually used a spell to come forward in time, and the Knight of Hell called Abaddon used the same spell to follow their grandfather. So everybody, pretty much, if you are proficient enough, you can use a spell, but I assume it does take, obviously a lot of study and a lot of knowledge. It's not something that like any Joe Schmo could just, pick up and do,
Yeah. And it's interesting that there's a couple different ways to do it. What do you mean when you say that if an angel causes time travel, it uses some of their grace?
Angels are powered by grace. It's what makes them angels. If an angel's grace is completely stripped from them, then they become human. And that actually happened before. An angel named Anna actually ripped out her own grace and tore off her wings and willingly fell to earth and was born as a human. And so it is possible for an angel to become a human. But yeah, that's how they have their powers. That's how they function as angels.
Interesting. I learned something new.
So my first one that I'm going to start with is actually Sailor Moon. Just a couple weeks ago, we did an episode where we talked about Sailor Moon, and it occurred to me that there was a time gate in Sailor Moon, and that was featured in both the manga and the anime. And what happens is time is like there's different timelines and different fabrics of time in Sailor Moon. So the time gate allows Chibiusa to go back in time to go see the Sailor Scouts, but there's also a whole like alternate timeline that is created by that. So it's time travel, but it's like the rewriting of what happened on any occasion. So there's a number of times where an alternate timeline can be made. And so after the introduction of Chibiusa, the past no longer is changeable. So as the death of either parent could not rewrite the second half of Sailor Moon R. And it's really weird when you get into looking at it, because not only are there there's anime and manga, and they all kind of attempt it in different ways. So Elisabeth, you can help me out here if you want to, because I'm still not 100% sure as to how it goes, because they've got an alternate timeline with Sailor Moon Sailor Stars, and that one's not actually shown, but it existed because Mamoru was returned to the future just before time occurred, and it basically has to do with going through this time gate. So it's only the gate, but it creates different alternate timelines each time. And what's even funnier is there's also, in the live action, they assume to rewrite the entirety of the future, where Sailor Moon actually requests to just be a normal girl, and that's what they assume happens at the end of it. So it's very strange when you're computing a Japanese storyline. It sort of was very variable. It comes back down to Sailor Pluto and the time gate and creating alternate timelines of where the Crystal Kingdom exists and sending people back from the Crystal Kingdom. And I was so confused. I'm still confused.
Yeah, like when I was watching it when I was younger, I didn't get too far into it. I pretty much watched what they aired on like Cartoon Network during their...
It's very like topical when you're a little girl.
Yeah. But I did, the furthest I think I got was when after Sailor Saturn had basically like, tried to sacrifice herself to save everybody. And that's pretty much, I mean, I think I saw a few episodes after that when she had like basically come back as a baby, but then like I think they took it off Toonami, or for some reason I wasn't able to watch the rest of it. And I was like, oh no, I wanted to see what happened.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this or not, but Saturn actually has like a complex where she remembers herself, but not really. Like there's an internal conflict there too. And even with her father too, Professor Tomo, he, it's thought that he could have had amnesia, but it could also be that it was like the stress of the situation made it so that he forgot what happened.
Yeah. So that, I do remember a little bit of that. It's, it was, I remember it was so complicated. I remember, Sailor Pluto was like, all had her fingers in there.
Yes. Yeah. And there is a little bit of moment too, where, the kitten Diana is in charge of the time gate. She takes care of the time gate while, Pluto goes to help Sailor Moon and the other Sailor Scouts against it's escaping me right now, but I'll remember as soon as we're done. But so there's a little moment where a kitten is guarding the time gate, but she's a really awesome kitten. So it's just very like the time gate needs to be guarded and fabrics in time.
That sounds complicated. That's all I have to say on that.
Yes.
So complicated for like just an anime, what you would think is just an anime.
Right.
All right. So then I'll talk about one of my favorite fandoms, Stargate. You've heard me express my love about Stargate. Stargate does address time travel, but it always happens by accident. No technology is able to intentionally cause people to time travel, whether it's in the past or into the future. It does happen in Stargate SG-1 and in Stargate Atlantis. I have not seen Stargate Universe, but it always does involve gate travel. So somebody traveling through the Stargate. And how gate travel works is basically a wormhole is opened between two different locations, and you're instantaneously, maybe within a few minutes, you're able to travel from one location to another, no matter how far away that location is. So in Stargate SG-1, they traveled through a wormhole intending to arrive at a certain planet, and the route of that wormhole, as calculated by Samantha Carter, was supposedly going to pass very close to Earth's sun. And they didn't know that a solar flare was also taking place at that exact moment, and that solar flare is what caused them to go back in time. And so that's how time travel happens in the Stargate universe. It's just by accident, by fluke happenings with the wormholes.
Okay.
Yeah, but so that causes them to go back in time in that particular instance in Stargate SG-1. In Stargate Atlantis, there was an instance where John Shepard, got transported through, he was intending to go to a planet and ended up being transported into the future a number of years. And so then he had to figure out how to get back to his own time. And the people that went back into the past had to figure out how to get back to their future, their own time, from the past. And it's all very interesting. And I love seeing those episodes and watching them figure out how to get back and everything, because, it happened by accident. So they have no idea how it worked at all. Thankfully, right. In the Stargate SG-1 episode, they were actually encountered somebody that they already knew and that sort of thing. And it was really cool. I'm not going to explain the whole thing, but they were able to get back, of course. It was only in the second season. So they were able to get back, and there were 8 more seasons after that. So, but what was interesting is they mentioned the grandfather paradox in that episode from season 2 of Stargate SG-1. And the grandfather paradox is this: if somebody went to the past and killed his grandfather, he would have never been born. So then maybe if he hadn't been born, he wouldn't have gone back to the past to kill his grandfather. So he would have been born, but then he wouldn't have been. Yeah. Paradox.
Okay.
Just a never ending loop.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's also this, there's this thing that happens where, opposite to the Harry Potter universe, if somebody takes a course of action in time, that causes a split, and there's an infinite possibility of splits to happen, creating alternative universes or realities. And so every decision that somebody makes at any point in time causes a new time stream to take place. And so that means there's an infinite number of time streams happening at any given time. And if you go back in time and change any event from a time stream, you automatically jump to a new time stream or create a whole new time stream because of what you changed from the past.
So how do you get back to the time stream? Do you just hope you don't change anything and hope it goes back?
Yeah. So the episode in SG-1, Sam Carter she's the mathematic, nerd geek about, time travel and the physics of everything. She's the mathematician physicist, and
she's the you of Stargate. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, totally. I'm Sam Carter. I'm super smart. No. But she's like, we need to do everything in our power to not change anything as best as possible. Yeah, because they've already changed the past by existing in the past, because they weren't supposed to be there to begin with. And they had all of their new technology with them, including an alien and alien technology because he's part of their team. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
It's very interesting. I loved it. It was a very well done episode. And there was also a follow-up episode to that one. So it is really cool. They refer back to that episode. I forget what episode it is in season 2, but it's called 1969. I don't know which episode it is in that season, but it's named 1969 because that's the year they go back to. So it's really, really interesting. And so I think the butterfly effect is what happens when it creates a new time stream every time and it ripples out. Is that what the butterfly effect is? Essentially,
you change one small thing and like there's just this cascade of events that happens just even with this one small thing.
Yep. Right. Exactly. So that's real fun.
My next fandom is also very technologically advanced, similar to Stargate, but there have been instances of intentional time travel, and that is in the Star Trek universe. Now, some of the first instances of time travel was accidental. For instance, with the USS Enterprise, they actually first experienced time travel accidentally in the original Star Trek episode, The Naked Time, when they did an emergency cold start of their warp drive, and it just slungshot the ship and crew 71 hours into the past. And so they had to deal with coming back from that. However, the first time they did it on purpose was within the next year, and they devised the very famously known slingshot effect in the episode Tomorrow is Yesterday, where basically you kind of aim yourself near a big star, kind of like the sun, and you have to go at this certain speed and like orbit it at just this certain way, and the way you do it is supposed to like whiplash you through time, like if you do it correctly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and there have been a few instances of like some unexplained alien tech sending them back in time, which is one of my favorite episodes called The City on the Edge of Forever addresses that, where they come on this planet and there's this big portal and it's called the Guardian of Forever, and it basically will send them back in time, and they have to deal with, they accidentally do something back then and then they have to fix it before they can come back.
Gotcha. I saw an episode of I think it was Deep Space Nine, where they went back to the original series, to the episode of Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh,
and they had segments of that episode in the DS9 episode, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
Okay. Oh yeah, probably the most famous, probably the most well-known instance of that slingshot effect was in the movie, the Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, when they had to go back to the past to retrieve the humpback whales and bring them back so that they could communicate with this alien tech.
All right.
I love that movie. I think that's a lot of people either love it or they hate it, but I absolutely love it.
That's great. It sounds really strange, but I know my husband has seen it because he's seen all of the Star Trek. Like literally, I'm pretty sure he has watched everything Star Trek that exists. So I know he's seen that. My husband's uncle actually loves all those Star Trek movies too. So I think that might be where he gets it from, but no, I'm sure it's great. It just sounds weird, like that humpback whales were a key to solving that.
Yeah, and there weren't any at that period in time because they were all extinct. So of course, what are you going to do but go back in time and get some?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to really quickly talk about the Marvel concept of time. We do have the Eye of Agamotto, and so that is the piece that clasps Doctor Strange's cloak together, but it is also the Time Stone. And as far as what it is, it's supposed to radiate a powerful mystical light, but that's what allows Doctor Strange to see through all disguises and illusions, and also to see past events and track future events too. So the Marvel Universe actually takes time and says that it's just a whole bunch of different time streams, which I think is really interesting because there is that one part of Infinity War where we all had a little bit of an issue with when he sits down and he's looking at all these different concepts.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I was not happy that he did that.
Right?
I was not happy that he did that at all.
It was interesting to look into how Marvel tackles time, because it's basically time travel is the process of leaving the current time stream at a given point, and you go to different aspects of time. There is a timeless realm of limbo where I don't know if you guys remember or not, but in the Doctor Strange movie, there's a part where he makes it so that time is in a loop, and that is the limbo, where it replays a certain period of time over and over and over again. That's unchanging and unchangeable. So there's that, which is limbo, but then, and so that, exists outside the time stream and then possesses no time at all. But there's all these other possible methods. So time travel in the Marvel Universe can be accomplished with time travel machines, magic, and personally generated energy. Obviously, the Eye of Agamotto, I'm saying it wrong.
Agamotto.
Arigato,
Mr. Roboto.
That is magic, obviously. But they all involve generating like this chronal displacement inertia. So it frees the person from that chronological time stream and makes a new one outside the time stream, whether it's limbo or another chronological position. So it's really cool. But it's very complicated, and it makes all these different things happen. So if one person travels a second time to what they think is the same time stream, it's not going to go back to like the virgin timeline. It actually like makes a new one. So it goes, it's always a different one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because everything that happens is part of an infinite,
So like if you're a time traveler, you can never like travel back to the exact same timeline more than once. It's continually compounding on top of itself.
Right.
Okay.
That solves little plot holes.
Yes. Yep.
My experience with Marvel Comics is kind of touch and go. Kind of similar to DC Comics as well. I kind of don't have a preference for either one, but I like just kind of dabble here and there. But yeah, like with both DC and Marvel, I mean, as I'm going to get into later, there are a lot of kind of similarities in the mechanics, and yet there are differences. And so I'm kind of interested to kind of illustrate the differences.
Right.
My final fandom then that I would, of course, how could we not discuss this one? Back to the Future. I mean, how could we not if we're talking about time travel across the fandoms? Maybe I should have mentioned this one first. Maybe not. I don't know. But Back to the Future was fantastic, and it involves all kinds of awesome nerdy references that everybody loves today, like the DeLorean and a flux capacitor and 88 miles an hour during a thunderstorm and everything like that. So time travel in Back to the Future is this, crackpot scientist weirdo guy called Doc, who is just a great man in general. I just loved his character. But anyways, he took a DeLorean and turned it into a time machine and used a thing called a flux capacitor that he invented himself. And so they travel in time in a car to a specific date. You can set whatever date you want to travel to, but you have to drive the car up to 88 miles an hour during a thunderstorm where the lightning has to give your car enough energy or something weird like that. And
or you have to have a nuclear power source, or once he went to the future, he actually outfitted it with this really fancy schmancy way to give it energy from garbage.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
It needs like a lot of power.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes sense. I mean, traveling through time obviously is not easy because we
You're creating a tear in the fabric of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yep. So there is that, and it also in this universe follows the grandfather paradox, like the Stargate universe does, where that every decision is made creates a new stream of time that follows other chronological events, and so it can alter things in the future, and the past, and that sort of deal. So if someone goes back in time and changes anything and starts another alternate universe, like the one in Back to the Future 2, I think it was, where Biff's family rules the world and it's terrible and everything's dumb.
Okay. I wonder why it's a grandfather paradox and not your father's paradox, because if you go back and kill your father, you still won't be around to...
Right. I don't know. Maybe whoever made the paradox's name, I don't know. It would be the same effect, though.
Well, you don't even have to necessarily kill them, because in the first Back to the Future, Marty interrupted his mother's and father's first meeting, and
right.
And then his mom was kind of into him, which was weird.
And so he had to kind of plot and plan and get them together so that, he wouldn't disappear.
Right.
What's interesting too, though, is we've gone from fandoms where time travel was accidental to where it's so very precise as it is with the DeLorean. So I think that's really cool. It can be, it's been approached as accidental and mysterious and extremely calculated as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely very fun, and I just love the Back to the Future movies. I think the third one, though, is my favorite one.
Oh, yeah.
If I have to pick.
That's the other thing,
so
too. In most of these scenarios, you cannot go back and see yourself.
True.
Have you noticed that with Harry Potter, with Back to the Future?
Mm-hmm. If you go back and see yourself, then you're in big doo-doo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My last one is actually my favorite one that I've been waiting to get into. So buckle up.
Yes!
Let's talk about DC. DC is a universe that is, it was meant for time travel. They actually had to implement time travel, because when DC Comics was originally going, back in the day, back in the golden age, there was no interaction between their different characters. So like Batman was in his own little world, Superman was in his own little world, Wonder Woman was in her own little world. They never really interacted with each other. It was like the other people didn't even exist. There were only rare events where they would cross over, but otherwise it was like, nah, they don't exist. However, as DC grew, they kind of came to the conclusion that, okay, we would like to have all of these superheroes basically in the same one universe, but the way that they had constructed all of their different timelines, it wouldn't work the way it was, because everything would just contradict each other. The way that, say Batman interacted with Wonder Woman, it would contradict, them coming together, in other words. So they couldn't just slam them together. So they had to come up with some way to do it. And I know everybody is probably familiar with Superman's, time travel, just flying around the world really fast and getting back there. But my favorite way of time travel with the DC universe is with the Flash. He uses the Speed Force, and he uses something called the Cosmic Treadmill. This was something, it was mentioned in Flash number 125, I think it was. That was the first time it was actually mentioned. It basically just enables him to utilize the Speed Force to travel back and forth in time. But they used this Cosmic Treadmill in the Crisis on Infinite Earths story arc back in the 80s. And that basically enabled them to slam all of their universes together into one cohesive universe so that, everything worked together. Because otherwise it was a whole bunch of different alternate timelines that was going on at one point, kind of like a multiverse kind of thing. And so Crisis on Infinite Earths enabled them to draw it all into one universe. Of course, this has been affected multiple times by multiple different arcs. One of my personal favorite was in Flashpoint, in which the butterfly effect that we've been talking about was very prominent, where Flash went back in time and saved his mother. And as a result, a lot of things happened and a lot of things changed. One of my personal favorites being that Bruce Wayne, instead of witnessing his parents' death, Bruce Wayne was the one that was killed, and Thomas and Martha Wayne survived. And so Martha Wayne, as a result of losing her child, Martha Wayne has a psychotic break and becomes the Joker, and Thomas Wayne, burdened with grief, becomes Batman. And so it is mind-blowing and it's amazing. But yeah, time travel is basically something that was incredibly necessary in order to create the DC universe that we have today. And, they still use it, as a plot device in arcs that have come and gone, even since Crisis on Infinite Earths. So it's something that, like I said, the DC universe is kind of built for.
Okay, so I'm going to finish up with Doctor Who. It wouldn't be complete without talking about a Time Lord.
Right?
And what's interesting is, there's plenty of classic Doctor Who that we haven't seen. So you try and find a list of all the different ways that they have done time travel in Doctor Who. The list is expansive, immense, enveloping. There's so many different ways to travel time in Doctor Who. We don't have enough time to talk about all of them. We could make a whole episode about them.
We should go back in time so we can talk about more of them.
So Time Lords are able to achieve time travel. So there's a space-time vessel like the TARDIS. There's also different ways where they have limited time travel technology. The Daleks under Davros were able to steal the Hand of Omega and replicate their process on Scaro's son. There's all these different ways. Okay, so what I wanted to talk mostly about was the laws of time, because we've already talked a little bit about how there is a crucial concept where you cannot approach yourself, you cannot see yourself. Mm-hmm. And that is definitely a concept that the Doctor comes back to several times. So you cannot meet yourself out of sequence or meet your former self, because terrible things would happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's several instances where Doctor Who actually talks about how one of the main rules is that you cannot change anything too big, like just parlor tricks, like just little things. You can't intervene in big history, just little history.
Just little. Like what I think of is like when they tried to go back and help Picasso.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's that. And then there's also things like how an object from a non-existent timeline cannot be present in the current timeline. So you can't take something that doesn't exist in a timeline and bring it to another one. There's also a part where you have to avoid voids. So you wouldn't want to go to a place where there's nothing. There's another part where the 10th Doctor tells Martha, we've already kind of said this, you can't just cross into established events except for cheap tricks. So you couldn't stop things like JFK's assassination, things like that, that really changed the entirety of history. And then there's outside interference. So Doctor Who actually goes in and he is able to change things where outside interference can be stopped, as opposed to internal interference. So with the humans, with Earthlings, he wasn't able to change big events that did not have to do with the outside interference. So that's what really gets me about it, is because these are very big events that happen. The Daleks taking over, the Cybermen. Just those two things, those being prevented, are big, holy moly moments, but they are outside interference as opposed to our own demise. So it's cool because Doctor Who saves us from others, but not ourselves.
And also, you can't cross your own timeline.
Exactly. Yep. Right. So you couldn't cross your own timeline. You couldn't meet yourself. You wouldn't want to change that. I'm still working out the whole thing with how River does
Rivers.
Stuff. But to be fair, they break all kinds of rules without breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. River and the Doctor have a very intertwined, very special timeline together.
Right. Spoilers.
Right? Spoilers. Something I want to do sometime is just watch everything from River's perspective in sequence.
Yes.
That would be really cool.
Can you imagine doing like a spin-off of that?
Right?
Everything is how things happen for her.
Right? Wouldn't that be
that's
great?
Another episode entirely.
I would love it. That would be so great. Well, thanks for getting nerdy with us today. Make sure you talk nerdy to us. First of all, you can make sure to give us some questions that we can answer on our anniversary episode coming up, because we would love to answer those for you so you can get to know us a little better, get to know, whatever questions you have for us. They don't have to be about us personally. They can be about fandoms. They can be about anything at all, really. We need questions from you. So ask us the questions on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, on our Tumblr. Also, what is your favorite fandom for time travel? Tell us that as well on our Facebook page. Also, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and others from Public House Media on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and wherever good podcasts are found. We love feedback, so if you liked this episode, or even if you didn't, please give us a rating and a review so we can keep making great episodes for you. I'm Emily.
I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Lindsay. And thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.